You should have handed over control when Dad passed. Brielle's voice cut through the noise like a knife through butter. This is our chance to sell and make a real profit. My heart stuttered as I peered around the corner, spotting my cousin deep in conversation with Ethan, my fiancé of 3 years. They huddled near the bar, oblivious to my eavesdropping presence at our winery's annual harvest party. I'm in, Ethan murmured with a solemn nod. We'll tell Avery after securing the deal. She won't be able to refuse once the money's on the table. Bile rose in my throat as the truth slammed into me. My own family, my supposed loved ones, plotting to steal away my father's life's work, everything I'd sacrificed to preserve. Trembling, I stormed away, desperate for space to process the gut-wrenching betrayal. Tears blurred my vision as I fled through the vineyard's rows, the muffled sounds of celebration fading behind me. How could they? After all the blood, sweat, and tears I'd poured into this place, into keeping Dad's dream alive. And Ethan? The man I'd planned to marry, willing to strip me of my legacy for profit. The vines stretched endlessly in every direction, mirroring the tangled maze of shock and rage clawing at my chest. I stumbled forward, uncaring of the twigs snagging my dress or the chill night air whipping across my face. It wasn't until I reached the secluded corner where Dad's favorite rosebush grew that I finally crumpled to the ground in anguished sobs. The petals glistened with dew, oblivious to my shattering world. After several ragged breaths, determination replaced despair. I wouldn't go down without a fight. Not while a single drop of my father's spirit flowed through these vines. If Ethan and Brielle wanted a war for the winery's soul, they'd soon discover I possessed more mettle than they could ever fathom. Fueled by righteous fury, I rose and marched with renewed purpose back toward the celebration. Ethan and Brielle would never see the tempest brewing behind my controlled smile as I rejoined the crowd. Let them bask in their misguided confidence. It would make their downfall all the more catastrophic. I was the master of this vineyard, and by night's end, I'd have the perfect scheme to protect Dad's legacy at all costs. In the days following the harvest party, I played the role of the oblivious fiancé to perfection. Ethan remained affectionate, his gentle kisses and soft caresses mere rehearsed performances masking his deceit. "How was your meeting with the marketing team?" he asked over dinner one evening, his hazel eyes betraying not a glimmer of guilt. I forced a smile. "Productive. We've got some exciting new campaigns in the works." Ethan nodded, shoveling a forkful of pasta into his mouth. "That's great, babe. I know how hard you've been working to take the winery to new heights." The blatant hypocrisy nearly made me gag. While he spouted meaningless platitudes, I secretly gathered evidence, piecing together the full extent of his treachery with Brielle. Tapping into the winery's financial records and encrypted communications, I discovered their embezzlement stretched back months, funds they'd been funneling into an offshore account. Printouts detailing dozens of wire transfers lay scattered across my office desk like damning puzzle pieces. My blood boiled as I connected their illicit money trail to meetings with corporate bigwigs, vultures eager to devour my family's legacy. "You lying, grasping snakes," I seethed through gritted teeth. The office door creaked open, and Lucia, my most trusted employee, stepped in with a concerned frown. "Everything okay, Miss Connors?" I waved her inside and gestured to the documents. "See for yourself. My dear fiancé and cousin have been stabbing us in the back for months, setting up a sale to that blood-sucking conglomerate we've been fighting off." Lucia's eyes widened in horror as she scanned the records. "Those maneuvers, how could they?" "Greed and self-preservation," I spat. "Ethan's likely counting on making me the rank-and-file winery bitch once the deal is done." I slammed my fist on the desk, delighting in Lucia's startled flinch. "But they're gravely mistaken if they think I'll roll over without bringing the entire facade crumbling down on their heads." Lucia swallowed hard, her voice wavering. "What are you going to do?" A wicked grin stretched across my face as the seeds of vengeance took root. "I'm going to remind them why you don't dispense with honor among thieves." The next morning, I strode into Marcia Blackwood's prestigious law office, evidence folder in hand. If anyone could help dismantle Ethan and Brielle's underhanded scheme, it was Marcia, a brilliant legal shark with a reputation for devouring corporate sleazeballs. Miss Connors, her assistant, ushered me inside. Miss Blackwood is expecting you. I found the renowned attorney studying a stack of documents behind her imposing mahogany desk. Razor-sharp eyes scrutinized me over the rim of her glasses as I approached. "You certainly have a flair for dramatic entrances," Marcia said dryly. "I hope, for your sake, you've brought me something substantial." Wordlessly, I handed over the folder and waited as she flipped through the incriminating paperwork. Bank statements, encrypted emails, everything I'd compiled on the betrayal. Marcia's practiced mask of stoicism slipped, her eyebrows arching in disbelief. "This is unbelievable. Your own family conspiring against you in broad daylight." I stifled the urge to snap. Try having that realization slap you across the face. Instead, I simply nodded. "Can you help me take them down?" My voice remained steady, devoid of the raging storm churning beneath my composed exterior. "I want to bury Ethan and Brielle under the full weight of legal and public retribution." A predatory glint flickered in Marcia's eyes, the look of a tiger scenting blood on the wind. "Oh, I'll do more than that, Miss Connors. By the time we're through, their reputations and freedom will be torn asunder. They'll be left destitute, forced to slink away from this valley with their tails between their legs." My lips curved into a vindictive smile, already envisioning the devastation I'd rain down upon the traitorous snakes slithering in my midst. Over the ensuing days, Marcia and I constructed an impenetrable counteroffensive, rallying allies in preparation to obliterate Ethan and Brielle's scheme. Anthony, my winery's head vintner, eagerly supplied information to undermine their corporate dealings. Jackson, our top sales rep, helped divert funds and reroute profitable distribution contracts. Kara in marketing launched a campaign showcasing our heritage and community ties, the very soul they aimed to ravage for profit. With each Ailey recruited and asset secured, the day of reckoning crept inexorably closer. Ethan and Brielle carried on clueless, their arrogance blinding them to the crumbling ground beneath their feet. I could hardly wait to cement the trapdoor's collapse and revel in their pathetic, well-deserved downfall. The first strike hit with precise, surgical brutality. This just in. Financial records have surfaced exposing embezzlement and corporate fraud at Connor Family Vineyards, the local news anchor announced in a grave tone. Sources indicate Chief Marketing Officer Ethan Baxter and Deputy Manager Brielle Evans have been funneling company assets into overseas accounts for personal gain. I watched with wicked satisfaction as the damning report flashed on the TV, my finger hovering over the pause button. Frozen on screen, Ethan and Brielle's faces contorted in horror. A perfect captured memory. In the ensuing days, a merciless barrage of legal filings and media leaks descended upon the conspirators. Marcia worked tirelessly, slapping them with criminal charges while ensuring every salacious allegation dominated headlines. Ethan confronted me in a heated parking lot showdown, his usually polished veneer cracked and disheveled. "Why are you doing this?" he demanded through clenched teeth, eyes wild and desperate. "We were going to set you up with a nice payoff, more than enough to retire comfortably." I laughed in his face, loud and mocking. "And let you thieves bleed my father's legacy dry? Spend his life's work on foosball tables and degenerate thrill-seeking?" The venom in my tone seemed to shrink him before my very eyes. "You deluded yourself into thinking I'd just hand over the keys and walk away once the money hit my account, that I'd forsake my responsibilities, my duties as Connor heir." Poking his chest with each enunciated word, I leaned until our faces were mere inches apart. "You miscalculated. Badly." Ethan recoiled, his expression incredulous. "So that's it? You'd rather watch everything burn than compromise?" Meeting his gaze with frigid certainty, I replied, "Some legacies are worth martyring over." With that, I spun on my heel and strutted away, leaving him to stew in his shattered delusions. The next phase hit hard and fast, a series of surgical strikes systematically sabotaging Ethan and Brielle's corporate dealings. One by one, their underhanded business negotiations unraveled in spectacular fashion. Within days, the Vineyard conglomerate abruptly pulled their buyout offer after our PR blitzkrieg portrayed us as a historic community anchor, the embodiment of Napa's proud heritage they'd never uproot without a customer backlash. All its posturing about market share and consolidation swiftly crumbled in the face of such toxic optics. Other potential investors fled like scattering roaches in the light, terrified of being labeled corporate pillagers. With their options dwindling, Ethan and Brielle found themselves outmaneuvered at every turn, each frantic move, born of arrogance and desperation, easily anticipated and deflected. Soon they'd have nowhere left to squirm except directly into the pit of consequences I'd meticulously excavated. I could already envision them dangling on the precipice, one fateful shove from total disgrace and ruin. With Ethan and Brielle's scheme to sell the winery lying in ruins, it was time to set the final stage for my grand defiance. I'd lured the snakes into a corner, now to spring the trap and crush them beneath my heel once and for all. The annual Winemakers Charity Gala presented the perfect opportunity. A high-profile event with investors, media, and industry bigwigs from across the valley in attendance. Precisely the backdrop I needed to thoroughly humiliate the treacherous fools threatening my legacy. "You wanted to speak with me?" Ethan sidled up beside me, his expression a pathetic mask of defeat and confusion. Behind him, Brielle hovered nearby, shoulders slumped in dejected resignation. I regarded them both with callous appraisal. "Yes, there's an important matter we need to discuss at the gala tonight, a major announcement regarding the winery's future." Ethan's brow furrowed as he processed my words. "You mean?" "Exactly." I allowed a calculated pause, lips curving into a razor-thin smile. "I think it's time I abdicated control and allowed the next generation to steer Connor Vineyards forward, with all our supporters present to bear witness." His features slackened in apparent relief, and I had to stifle a derisive snort. If only he knew the profound depths of his delusion. I don't know what to say," he stammered out. "Thank you for finally seeing reason, Avery. I promise Brielle and I will make you proud with the new direction." "Save your platitudes." I cut him off with a dismissive wave. "Just be prepared to embrace your role on the stage tonight. It'll be a performance neither of you will ever forget." As the gala commenced a few hours later, tension simmered just beneath the celebratory surface. Ethan and Brielle worked the crowds with artificial cheer, confidence buoyed by hubris and ignorance. They fully expected this evening to mark their ascension as winery overloads, a private victory party attended by the entire valley's elite. Little did the self-deluded fools realize the event heralded loss-doomed downfall, orchestrated by the very woman they sought to disenfranchise. Their humiliation would be gloriously public, a final legacy-staining trauma to complement the mountain of legal consequences still to come. Enjoying the evening? I sidled up to them with 2 fresh glasses of crisp Chardonnay, every inch the gracious hostess. Brielle accepted her drink, green eyes glinting with avarice. "It's just the start of many more to come under our management." "About that." I raised my glass in preparation for a toast. "I believe I promised a special announcement tonight?" Ethan's face broke into an eager grin, gobbling up the bait with reckless desperation. "You finally saw the light. We're ready to lead the winery into a new prosperous era." Seizing the moment, I strode up onto the stage and seized the microphone, my voice amplifying across the hushed ballroom with authority. "Esteemed guests, as many of you know, this gala celebrates not just the year's harvest, but the bonds of community, heritage, and family." I paused, letting the pregnant silence saturate the air like a heavy fog. "Therefore, it is with great dismay I must reveal there are snakes in our midst." Pitching my voice to drip with disdain, I turned a piercing glare upon Ethan and Brielle's ashen faces. Snake who've been siphoning profits into offshore accounts and orchestrating an illegal sale to corporate raiders, all in a selfish ploy to steal what isn't theirs. The room erupted in shocked gasps and furious murmurs. Ethan gaped at me in abject horror, his knees visibly trembling. Score 1 for catching the rats by surprise. "But take heart, my friends," I continued, allowing a vindicated smile. "For I've spent months unraveling this scheme and constructed a righteous counterattack to preserve the heart and soul of Connor Vineyards. And as we speak, law enforcement is en route to apprehend the conspirators and abate this betrayal once and for all." That caused another thunderous roar to swell, this one of cheers and applause from the assembled guests. Ethan and Brielle could only stand frozen, their traitorous aspirations rejected in the most grandiose, humiliating forum imaginable. This was more than just the death of their scheme, it was the public immolation of their dreams, their reputations irrevocably stained for all to witness. smile widening to bask in their torment. I locked eyes with Ethan, allowing my voice to rise above the raucous din in one final damning declaration. And so ends the inglorious paths of those foolish enough to betray Connor family vineyards. The silence that followed my declaration was electric, charged with 1,000 unvoiced gasps and accusations. Every eye in the gala burned into Ethan and Brielle, the snakes exposed in their traitorous coils. Clutching the microphone, I drank in the moment, savoring their abject humiliation as event security closed in to apprehend them. There would be no escape, no last-minute reprieve to salvage their crumbling reputations. "You lying bitch!" Brielle exploded first, always the blazing tempest to Ethan's simmering tumult. Flecks of spittle flew from her snarling lips as she wheeled on me in impotent rage. "How dare you? After everything our family sacrificed to build this place up from nothing." A cruel laugh burst from my chest, mocking and utterly devoid of mercy. "Sacrificed?" I echoed back at her venomous glare. "By stealing and scheming behind my back to rob me of my rightful inheritance? If that's the extent of your sacrifices, then allow me to return the favor." Sweeping an arm out, I gestured to the assembled crowd staring in scandalized fascination. "Esteemed guests, I give you Brielle Evans and Ethan Baxter, a contemptible pair of vipers who not only embezzled funds and orchestrated an illegal sale, but deluded themselves into thinking I'd simply hand over my legacy to their greedy clutches once the money hit my accounts." A fresh torrent of gasps and whispers rippled through the room, judgment and damnation raining down on the exposed snakes. No corner of this prestigious venue would offer them refuge, only the unforgiving glare of a community outraged by their insidious betrayal. "Well, here's your wake-up call." I locked eyes with the fuming Brielle, jaw clenched to savor her swift descent into panicked realization. "The Connors don't fold to snakes or sell our souls so easily. We have a pride and resilience that parasites like you could never comprehend." Dismissing her with a contemptuous sneer, I turned my scathing address toward the squirming Ethan. "And you, my so-called husband-to-be orchestrating a con to strip me of everything I've sacrificed for. Tell me, were you even attempting to mask your disloyalty, or just stringing me along like a blissfully ignorant puppet?" Ethan opened his mouth to respond, but any protest withered on his ashen lips beneath my blistering glare. "Save your platitudes, we both know the truth. You saw an opportunity for an easy payday. Damn whoever's lives or legacies got chewed up along the way." My fingers stabbed with each enunciated syllable, driving the humiliation deeper. "Well, you miscalculated badly, Baxter, and now you'll reap the widespread ruination you've disgraced yourselves by earning." As if on cue, the ballroom doors flew open, revealing a grim-faced Marcia Blackwood flanked by county sheriff's deputies, the legal cavalry arriving to compound the conspirators' devastation. They swept forward as twin tidal waves of dread finally crested over Ethan and Brielle's masks of feigned innocence. Excuses and justifications died on their lips, choked off by the stark ramifications crashing down upon their elaborately orchestrated scheme. Ethan turned to me, momentarily unmasked in his desperation. "Avery, please." But I cut him off with a contemptuous slash of my hand. "I don't know who you are anymore, Ethan. Only that you're just another snake unworthy of my name or legacy." His shoulders slumped just before the deputies seized his arms, the dual blows of exposure and consequence robbing him of any final defiance. Fighting back a cruel smirk of satisfaction, I handed off the microphone to the approaching Marcia and stood tall, basking in the complete conquest over those who dared imperil everything I held sacred. The sight of Ethan and Brielle being led away in shackles amid a chorus of infuriated shouts branded itself into my memory like a searing brand. A watershed moment, their pathetic hopes and conniving snuffed out, the battlefield belonging solely to the righteous victor once more. In the days following the gala, a torrential downpour of consequences deluged Ethan and Brielle's shattered world. The dominoes I'd meticulously lined up for months toppled in devastating, unrelenting succession. First came the media crucifixion, a full-court blitz of skating exposés that left no damning stone unturned. Embezzlement figures, paper trails of illicit deals, and every unsavory allegation flooded the airwaves and newspapers. Then, the corporate clients and investors rapidly distanced themselves from the toxic fallout. Distributors and joint ventures severed ties as if the conniving snakes had developed a virulent, untreatable plague. Lucrative contracts evaporated overnight, closing off any potential lifelines or escape routes. Within a week, the once burgeoning empire Ethan and Brielle envisioned lay smoldering on the funeral pyre of their treacherous designs. Watching the dominoes spiral from my winery office's floor-to-ceiling windows, I sipped a crisp Chardonnay, smoky undertones from the Heritage Vineyards crop complemented by the sweetness of hard-earned vindication. "It's all crumbling apart for them out there," Lucia murmured, mirroring my hawkish gaze. "Just like you said it would." "Of course." I swirled the glass, observing the pale liquid's lazy eddies. "Snakes like Ethan and Brielle slither on instinct and impulse. They can't help reverting to their vile natures. Snakes need to be defanged and rendered harmless before they can contaminate the surrounding environment." Lucia's brow furrowed as she processed my detached analysis. "And you're just okay with doing that to your own cousin? Your ex-fiancé?" A wintry smirk tugged at the corners of my lips. "I am the master of this vineyard, Lucia. Those sorts of personal entanglements and sentiments are luxuries I cannot afford to entertain, not when the stakes are so monumental." Shaking her head slowly, she shifted her gaze back outside. "I don't know how you have the stomach for it. All this, coldly dismantling their lives." "It's not about vengeance or settling scores," I replied evenly. This was always about upholding the values and legacy my father imparented upon these vines. Some degradation simply cannot be allowed to take root. A brief lull stretched between us as the enormity of the situation resonated. After a few thoughtful sips, I broke the silence. "We're in the final throes now. Ethan and Brielle's reputations are decimated beyond repair, their underhanded ambitions rendered stillborn." My finger traced the path of a large truck pulling away from a nearby warehouse, the last dribbles being siphoned off their illicit overseas accounts and asset seizures. Soon, their ill-gotten windfalls will be returned to their rightful place, and they'll be left as they began, common graspers stripped of all influence and credibility. A grim smile etched across my features as I envisioned them reaping the whirlwind of their own making. No prison could confine them as completely as the reputations and futures they'd willingly immolated on the altar of greed and treachery. Every eye would forever gaze upon them and see only the parasites who betrayed family and legacy for a quick payday, irredeemable snakes expelled from their padded Eden into the wilderness of permanent societal exile. A more comprehensive immolation than anything I could have orchestrated by sheer force of will. "It's the perfect karmic justice," I declared, clinking my glass against Lucia's in a muted toast. "They'll never hold power or influence in this valley or respected circles ever again." As the crystal chimed, my gaze drifted over the sprawling vineyards basking in the valley's reflected emerald glow. The spark of renewal and reinvigoration already gathered on the horizon, possibilities blossoming like a new bountiful harvest yet to be plucked. My family's righteous legacy endured, burnished anew while the snakes shriveled and expired, warnings to any who dared stake foolish claims against its roots. I would ensure the winery's spiritual heart stemmed strong and proud in the aftermath. This land and its fruits would continue upholding the honored Connor's name long after Ethan and Brielle faded from memory like the meaningless parasites they were. Order had been restored, karmic balance achieved with a ruthless, defensive precision. In the aftermath of Ethan and Brielle's disgrace, an unsettled quiet descended upon the vineyards, the calm before a new season of growth and rebirth took root. I stood alone amid the pruned vines, calloused fingers tracing the gnarled bark, as the first whispers of spring's rejuvenation danced on the crisp morning breeze. The heady, fertile scents served as a poignant reminder of the perpetual cycles governing our world. Decay always preceded new life flourishing from the fallow remnants. Closing my eyes, I inhaled deeply and permitted myself a faint, rueful smile. Ethan and Brielle were experiencing that harsh transition now, reaping the bitter harvest they'd sown through arrogance and betrayal. Once vitally connected to this sacred valley's lifeblood, they now found themselves permanently severed, withered husks left behind as the next evolution in Connor Vineyards progressed without them. "You look entirely too philosophical for someone clutching pruning shears." Anthony's gruff voice shook me from my reverie. I cracked open one eye to find the cantankerous old vintner shuffling up beside me, shotgun slung over his shoulder in his usual curmudgeonly fashion. "Just savoring the turning of seasons," I replied, nodding toward the replenished vines already studding with pale green buds, contemplating the cycles that govern all aspects of life. Anthony snorted, hawking a thick globule of phlegm into the pristine soil. "If you're searching for some grand metaphor about your jackass ex-fiancé and money-grubbing cousin, you're barking up the wrong goddamn vineyard." I fought back a chuckle, recognizing Anthony's typical bluster. "Not at all," I assured him, merely appreciating the moments of peace and clarity before we dive headlong into another demanding harvest. The brusque old man gave a grudging nod, squinting out over the sea of vibrant green shoots stretching toward the horizon. "Well, at least you finally evicted those parasitic rats mucking about in the wine cellar," he growled. "Spat enough dealing with aphids and mildew without vermin infestations threatening to strangle the whole operation." His crass wisdom struck an unexpected chord of sanguine appreciation within me. Somehow, Anthony's earthy pragmatism invoked the spirit of these lands more than any fragrant spring zephyr or poetic Renaissance musings could muster. Some legacies endured not through florid romanticisms, but by the hard-bitten determination to preserve their essence through every cycle of death and rebirth. Dad had that stubborn tenacity, and now, in the aftermath of my own battle to safeguard our proudest fruits, it seemed I had awoken to it as well. Nodding toward the distant winery complex peeking over the knolls, I voiced the conviction blossoming in my chest. "I want to expand our attractions and hospitality ventures," I declared. "Lavish new visitor experiences to take this place to even greater heights. Show the world we're not some quaint foothill boutique, but a leading cultural anchor as timeless as the grapes we cultivate." Anthony regarded me with one bushy-thing eyebrow arched. "Mighty ambitious talk, Miss Connor." A cantankerous smirk tugged at the corner of his cracked lips. "Hope you've got the grit to back it up once the snakes come slithering back." My fingers tightened around the pruning shear's worn wooden grip, drawing reassuring strength from its hewn permanence. "I'm counting on it," I replied with a feral grin. "The vines and soil have tasted treachery. They'll never allow anything besides the purest offerings to take nourishment again. Let the serpents bare their fangs, we'll simply lop off their skulls and continue flourishing as we were meant to." Anthony held my gaze for a long moment before unleashing a gravely chuckle that reverberated across the peaceful vineyard like a rollicking thunderclap. "Well, I'll be damned," he sputtered between wheezing guffaws. "You've finally grown a nice pair of auteur Italian grapes, haven't you, girl?" My laughter joined his, the twin reverberations mingling and trilling through the awakening vines, harbingers of the revitalized spirit and enterprise taking root. As our mirth gradually subsided into a comfortable quiet, I gazed out over my family's verdant domain with a renewed sense of purpose igniting within. No longer would I merely aim to preserve these hallowed lands. That passive existence felt unbefittingly hollow in the wake of my trials. From the ashes of duplicity and desecration, a new, more ambitious path beckoned to be forged, one that would elevate Connor Vineyards to unprecedented glories and esteem its founder could scarcely have envisioned. But I sensed Dad's spirit smiling down upon the endeavor, regardless, for he would surely recognize the resilience and singular drive propelling his heir's ascent from turmoil to triumph. The snakes had been vanquished. Now it was time for the phoenix to stretch its wings and soar toward new promised harvests.